Hey, so on today's video, we're gonna go behind the scenes to see what it's like to shoot a wedding from start to end. We'll go into the process of what it's like to prepare before the wedding day, the getting ready portion of the day, the romantics portion, the family photos portion, and the reception. We'll also go into the techniques that we use and what it's like to deal with stressful situations. One of the first things we do before the actual wedding day is we go through and charge all of our batteries. And by all of our batteries, we mean we bring loads and loads amounts of batteries, enough to cover 2 or 3 weddings, but just in case something goes wrong, we always have that backup plan in place. And one thing about shooting weddings is that you always have to have redundancies for everything. You need redundancies for cameras, batteries, memory cards, because you only get one shot to shoot someone's wedding, and if something fails, you better have a backup for it because you're not gonna get another shot. We also bring lots of tripods, monopods, audio recorders, lavaliers, drones, anything and everything that you can possibly think of to bring to a wedding, we bring to the wedding. If you see our cart and our wagon that we drag into the wedding day, you think we'd be shooting like a full-scale music video production. On today's wedding day, we arrived and the bride and the groom were a little bit behind schedule. Betty, the bride, she was still doing her hair and makeup, and we didn't have much space to work with inside the getting ready room itself. We kind of had to quickly clean up a corner of the room just to get some shots of the groom while the bride was getting ready. And one of the things that you really have to master as a wedding photographer is time management. You have a long list of photos you need to take, but you also have a finite amount of time. If you spend too much time trying to get all of the images that you want, then the wedding timeline just get more and more behind, which kind of causes more stress for the coordinator, more stress for bride and groom. So you want to avoid that as much as possible. So in this scenario, I saw that, okay, we're not going to have time to get flat lay photos because we're too behind. And then we're not going to have time to get too many getting ready shots of the bride and the groom, so I just kind of cut it down to the bare fundamentals of just a couple of solo shots, shots with the bride in her dress, shots with the bridesmaids before they changed. When you're working weddings, you have to be very adaptable. 9 out of 10 times, you can always expect something to go wrong with the wedding day timeline, whether they are behind with hair and makeup, or someone forgets something, or someone shows up late. Just always expect something to go wrong. If you expect at least 1 or 2 things to go wrong, then you'll never be surprised. Adapt, adapt, adapt. And another thing you have to understand is you shouldn't be standing around doing nothing. You want to utilize your time as much as you possibly can. So in this instance, while the bride was changing into her wedding dress, we took this opportunity to take the groom and the groomsmen outside of the hotel room into the hallway to start getting some of their getting ready shots. I actually saw this clip online of some wedding videographers experimenting with a lens in front of their light, like their Godox light. And what the lens does is it kind of magnifies the beam instead of being just one spread light, it's one concentrated circle beam with a hard edge. Literally just push the light back and forth to see if we can get a dramatic effect. And we also brought some haze in a can that we sprayed as well to also kind of add a beamy effect. And it came out really, really well. And we'll show you the clip right now. It's always good to always be experimenting with new ideas. Some ideas might work, most ideas won't work, but when you do find something that works, stick to it, and it's always super satisfying to see a new technique used. So once we were done experimenting with the light technique that we were using, we head back into the room when the bride was fully dressed, so that way we didn't waste any time. Well, because this was my first time shooting at the Sheraton Universal, I had to do a little bit of research online to see what the angles in the venue were. I saw that there was an outside grass garden area with the hotel in the back. And while we were heading to that location, when we were going down the escalator, I saw this hallway with a beautiful chandelier with lots of drapery, white drapery that kind of perfectly diffuses the light. For the bride and the groom shots, the groom was kind of busy managing some people. Some people were falling behind for their family portraits. So I took that time to take some solos of just the bride by herself. I used the window and the drapery as a natural light diffuser, which turned out perfectly. She had a beautiful soft light falling on her face. I'm about to make a miracle happen by cramming 1 hour's worth of pictures in hopefully 15 to 20 minutes. Once the groom was ready, we brought him back into the portraits so we can get some pictures of just him and the bride. After we were finished with their romantics, we headed out into the garden area. Because we were still waiting for most of the family and some of the wedding party, I decided to start with the bride and the groom first. But once all the family had arrived, You want to start with the family so that you can get those pictures done first so they can head out to the reception or head out to the cocktail hour, because you don't want the family just waiting around while you take pictures of the wedding party and the bride and the groom. So once we were finished with the family portraits, we dismissed them and then we went into the wedding party portraits. How I like to do that is I start off with the bride and her bridesmaids, then the groom and the groomsmen, and then the whole wedding party together with the bride and the groom. So from all my years of shooting weddings, I've learned that people tend to be very stiff in the first 15-ish minutes or so of being in front of the camera, because no one's used to being in front of the cameras. But once they kind of get used to that, the tension goes away and they start to be a little bit more relaxed and a little more natural for their pictures. So in the very beginning, I like to start off with pose shots, where I tell them where to look, where to stand, where to place their hands, posture, stuff like that. And once they're more and more comfortable with being in front of the camera and more comfortable with taking pictures or video, from there we'll slowly transition into candid shots where I'll do prompts, having the bride and the groom or the wedding party kind of interacting with one another so we can get those nice laughing shots that everyone loves. You don't want that moment where you tell them, oh, you should all laugh. Everyone's like, ha 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 ha, looking around awkwardly. It doesn't look nice and everyone feels weird doing it. So start off with pose and then transition into candid shots. We also like to get a photo of the bride with all the bridesmaids individually. Same thing with the groom and all the groomsmen individually. And once we're done with that, the wedding party were dismissed to go up to the cocktail hour. Lastly, we ended up with getting a couple more photos of just the bride and the groom in front of the hotel. And how my style is I like to incorporate a lot of landscape photography elements along with portraiture. And if I can combine both aspects of landscape photography and subject portraiture into one image, then that's my style. I like to take a lot of wide, super dramatic shots where you really see how grand the backdrop is, while really seeing how the couple is in love, how they're posed, their facial expressions. To me, that's the perfect image where you can perfectly combine both of those aspects. And from there, we were ready to go into the reception where everything was perfectly set up, and we started doing our full room shots, our detail shots, and we also started setting up our lighting and our audio equipment. For the full room shot, we have to coordinate with the coordinator and the staff at the venue to kind of clear the room so we can get a couple of shots with no one in it. Once we get a couple of the full room shots done, then we like to get a couple of close-ups of the table settings, the sweetheart table, any floral decorations, guest cards, the dessert table, the cake. Then we also had some time to get a photo of the bride and the groom by themselves on the wedding dance floor with the whole venue around them with nobody in the photo. That's one of the photos I always want to take, because sure, you get a full room shot, but wouldn't you want to be in your own wedding hall in the photos? So that's one of the pictures that I always want to get. If you're a wedding couple and you have a wedding coming up, here's a couple of tips that will kind of help you get through the wedding day a lot smoother. Tip number one, however long you think you're gonna need for hair and makeup, add 30 minutes to that as a little bit of a time cushion, because 9 out of 10 times whenever we're behind schedule on the wedding day, it's usually because of hair and makeup. Tip number two, try to get as much sleep as you can before the wedding day. Take some melatonin if you need to, or if you want to be really extreme, do an all-nighter the night before so that you're extremely sleepy the day before the wedding day so you'll knock out. Tip number three, if there's any specific photos, any specific angles, poses that you really want for your wedding day, make sure to communicate that with your photographer and videographer. I recommend making a Pinterest board or a shot list, just so that your photographer and videographer know what you're expecting so they can make sure to capture all the shots that you essentially want. Tip number four, if you think that you're really awkward or nervous in front of the camera, I recommend doing an engagement session before the wedding day, so that way you can get acclimated with your photographer, you can familiarize yourself with them, and so that you can rehearse poses and your photographer can show you how to do a couple of really unique poses like the dip or pick each other up in the air or some dance moves. So that way you're a little more comfortable and you're a little more familiarized with the whole picture taking process before the actual wedding day. Tip number five is expect one or two things to go wrong. It always happens, something goes wrong and you're completely panicking because you don't know what to do. If you are already expecting something to go wrong, then you won't really be surprised, and then you'll always be like, oh, I knew that was coming. So yeah, that's pretty much what it's like to shoot a wedding day. If you guys had any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Please remember to like and subscribe. I see that 90% of you watching aren't subscribed. So if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe and then follow us on Instagram. And thanks for watching.